As I mentioned earlier, when Bert was getting near the end, I received a message from Brett saying, the doctor says Bert doesn't have much longer. So I debated right then and there, it was a Sunday night, of whether to get in my car and drive to Dallas, but I didn't. And I arrived the next day to find Bert surrounded by women, floating on a cloud of love, as you might imagine. And I had to laugh when I read the book again, that Bert always had a twinkle in his eye, and if you read this, you'll know that he has an appreciation for ladies. And in one chapter here, he talks about how he went to a bar, and Jackie, a well-endowed cocktail waitress, just could not see him as he saw himself. And that was, I have to read it here because I don't want to mess up the quote here. Well, how could she not think I was funny, cute, and just a half a degree off darling? Well, that woman obviously didn't know squat, because we all know Bert was darling and then some. And I feel that last week he hung on more than a day, because he was surrounded by love and women. And St. Peter's going to ask him, Bert, what took you so long? And he's going to say, would you leave with all these women all around me, showering him with love? Now, I neglected to introduce one very special woman in this auditorium, and she was there as Bert's caretaker, and that's Vicki. Vicki, please stand. She was there for him. And as I mentioned, every time I came over, Bert was surrounded by people, his family, his loved ones, and I just went over there trying to, check on him and see the family and hopefully not say the wrong thing to them. I just wanted to be a good friend to him, because, as you may have heard, I have a little extra time on my hands these days. But never, life is too short. We have to thank those people who have made a difference in our lives and love them, because you never know what day will be our last. So it was my privilege to be there with the family, and as I said, they took me in. And now it's my honor to introduce Brett Shipp, who has the very hard job. He agonized about this, doing a eulogy of his father, the one and only, Bert Shipp. As I mentioned, there is no other, there never will be an other, a man like the man that we knew, who made our lives fun and also made us better in our newsroom and made us appreciate that life is for living. And I'll close in my introduction of you that when Bert signed my book, he wrote, Gloria. He used to call me Gloria. Come up to the desk and say, how you doing, Gloria? Gloria, what a trip we have been on. Let's stay happy. So let's keep it happy.
Thank you, Lord. I love you so much. And there is no words that can truly describe how much we appreciate what you did for us in that last week. When you walked in the house, when Gloria would walk in the house, the mood would change, and frowns turned to smiles, and she just lit all of our hearts on fire. And I know that Bert also lightened up, and he felt her presence, and she was such a great spiritual bonus to us all. And also Tracy, thank you so much. Vicki and Tracy, both of you. Tracy is Vicky's daughter. Both of you guys, we love you so much for what you did, not just for my dad, but for my mom as well. Well, everyone in here who knew Bert Shipp loved Bert Shipp. He was friendly, tough, resourceful, street smart, pithy, gritty, down to earth. He was funny, fearless, and frugal. He was hardworking, compassionate, patient, and impatient with certain individuals, not his family. He was good and he was clever. Up until his last few days, he was still sharp enough to send a zinger to any stranger he came across, including the nurse who walked in the room one day and said, "Mr. Shipp, are you able to swallow for me?" And he looked at her without a beat and he says, "I don't know, are we in Capistrano?" And the nurse said, "Huh?" And I thought to myself, my God, this man still has it. He gets it. But I'm sure there's certain people in this audience who don't get it, and that's what I love. Swallow Capistrano, Google it. I said, "Bob, how's the hospital food?" And he goes, "Well, Hoss, when water is the best thing on the menu, it's time to leave." But the best adjective to describe my dad is one that only me and my brother and my sister truly got to appreciate, and that is our father was cool. How cool was he? Well, let's see. One night I remember he came home and he brought us, the Beatles autographs. Those autographs are out in the foyer if you hadn't seen them. That's pretty cool. One night he came home with a brand new 1965 convertible Mustang. It was white and with red interior, and I still can smell the new car smell when he brought that home, and our hearts just went crazy when we saw this incredible vehicle sitting in the front yard. And then one night it was a Cutlass 442 that he happened to bring over. We were the first kids ever to go to Six Flags, and I mean that. We even have film of that first day when Six Flags opened. We got free tickets to the Cowboys games, SMU games, Dallas Chaparrals, Dallas Tornado, Dallas Fort Worth Spurs, the Dallas Blackhawks hockey team. Free everything, and we never asked why. It wasn't until I became a reporter that I finally figured out, wow, my dad must have shit on a lot of people. Imagine being the coolest kids in Highland Park. We were the poorest kids, but we were also the coolest kids. We were so poor we had to drive up and down the alleys and find old Coke bottles to try to collect a deposit on them so we could buy swim tags for the Highland Park swimming pool. I'm pretty sure we were the only kids in Highland Park who had to do that. Pool, cool, poor but perpetually cool, because my dad was Bert Shipp. We got to go everywhere that no other kid got to go for free. Fatal fires, grisly, morbid wrecks, carjackings, railroad accident decapitations. Are you jealous? For cheap thrills, and Bruce, you'll remember this, for cheap thrills, my dad used to take us out on a weekend night. We begged him to do this, and without hesitation, he would run us down to the Parkland emergency room, where we watched the meat wagons roll in with bodies in various states of morbidity. And that was such a thrill for us. Once a month or so, my dad would bring home a reel of film from Channel 8. And the film was so gory, it was stuff that was too gross to put on the air. But he would bring it home. And folks, that was movie night at the Shipp House. One night, the feature attraction was a highly classified, totally unauthorized copy of the Zapruder film. I'm pretty sure if Life magazine knew we had a copy of that, the entire Shipp family would be led out of the house. In cuffs. We were the coolest kids in Highland Park, I tell you. Every one of my YMCA football games was filmed by my dad on said Bell & Howell camera, 16 millimeter, beautiful color film. And so we had all of this film of the whole team. And so after the season was over, my mom would host a party to watch highlights of the year's games. But spliced in the middle of those highlights, I kid you not, and some of you will remember this, were little snippets of strippers. They were clothed, but they were strippers. Candy Bar, Bubbles Cash, Tammy True. And the kids loved coming over to our house for football end of season highlight night. I got a chance to interview Tammy True a couple of years ago for a Kennedy assassination thing. Now, she used to strip for Jack Ruby at the Carousel Club. And I was interviewing Tammy, and she looked at me in between, drags off her cigarette, and when she said to me, "Honey, I knew your daddy." I said, "Yeah, Tammy, well, I was 8 years old and my daddy showed film of you shaking your ass." He would take us to school in his Channel 8 news unit, and all the kids would just gawk as we pulled up in this car with all these radio antennas, and we were the coolest thing. I got to hang out at Channel 8. And I got to meet Tracy Rowlett, and I got to meet Bob Gooding and Murphy Martin and Vern Lundquist, and most importantly, I knew Mr. Peppermint. That was my dad covering the Kennedy assassination, the Super Bowl, the Ruby trial, the Billy Saul Estes trial, the Cuban Missile Crisis with Ross Perot in Vietnam, and at the Indy 500. That was my dad at Hurricane Carla, Hurricane Beulah, Alicia, and Alan. If a hurricane hit the coast of Texas, Hoss was in the middle of it, much to my mom's horror. My mom's biggest nightmare was his tale in 1967 of riding out Hurricane Beulah at the Fort Brown Hotel in Brownsville, Texas, where he said at one point in the middle of the night, the roof of his hotel room peeled back like a sardine can, and he scrambled to get under the bed to save his life. Now, you would think that that experience alone would deter him from wanting to cover any more hurricanes. Wrong. That was fuel to his fire. However, if a hurricane happened to hit in August, that hurricane had to wait because my dad was where, Stephanie?
Thousand Oaks, California.
You heard it, Thousand Oaks, California, cowboy camp. Where as news director in the 1960s, he got to assign himself to cover the Cowboys camp. We used to love to hear stories of him hanging out with Tom Landry and Bob Lilly and Leroy Jordan and Tex Schramm. But the best stories of Cowboy camp I found out later in life, and there was a reason why. He used to love to hang out with Don Meredith, and he and Don Meredith were running buddies. Well, the best story he ever told me about him and Meredith was when they went to Vegas one weekend when the Cowboys had the weekend off. So he flew to Vegas, and a Texas oil man recognized Meredith and put him up in a suite at Caesar's Palace, and then bankrolled their entire weekend of gambling, and then took them to see Sinatra and Joey Bishop at the Stardust, where Bert swears that they bumped into Eddie Fisher, and who was sitting in a front row table, and everybody said, "Mr. Fisher, you need to leave. Don Meredith and Bert Shipp are going to sit here." And they did. And they got to meet Sinatra after, and I'm sure the drinks were paid for by someone else. Now, I wasn't sure who paid for the drinks the night that my dad and Meredith were in Los Angeles, and they were having a good time at some establishment in LA, and it was time for Meredith to get back to Thousand Oaks because it was curfew. And so they jumped in a rental car, and they started heading up the Ventura Highway. And they suddenly hit a thick fog and couldn't see to drive. So they abandoned the car and started walking back up the Ventura Highway when a trucker passed them and slammed on his brakes and said, "That's Don Meredith," and gave them both a ride back to Cal Lutheran so Meredith could make it before bedtime. Oh yeah, my time's up. I'm sorry, I'll run this up. There's a million things that I could say about my dad, and I could talk forever, and we don't have the time. But I will say what has become so apparent to me in these last few days and weeks is I've heard the things from all of you that in the past month made me realize how amazing it's been for all of us to be a part of his life and his circle of friends and those whose lives he quietly enriched. Ezekiel, are you here? His yard man? Ezekiel was with my dad in one of his last days, and he was crying and holding my dad's hand, and I put my arm around Ezekiel, and Ezekiel looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "Your dad was like a brother to me." And, that touched my heart more than I can say. Keisha, one of my mom's hospice helpers who struck up a friendship with my dad, told me through, again, a river of tears before he died, that he was like a father to her and the father that she never had. She told me she loved my dad. Keisha, he loved you. And Robert Watkins, a cub photographer who my dad took under his wing back in the early 1970s, 4 decades ago, called me in tears when my dad was dying. He called me to tell me how Haas was like a father to him. And it wasn't just me and Bruce and Stephanie, but that there's a huge family of us who were loved and raised and educated by Bert Shipp, who taught us things that nobody else would or could teach us. On the back of the program, I put a little saying. It's a quote that I put in his obituary, and to me it just sums up so well his life. Each man's life touches so many other lives. When he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? Clarence the Angel in It's a Wonderful Life. When I started to gather some things for today, I came across a couple of notes. One of them was from Scott Pelley. And he said, "Bert, I wouldn't be where I am today without your friendship and wise counsel. I'm grateful to you, Bert. Not a day goes by that I don't think of you and apply the lessons you taught me." Scott Pelley learned a lot from my dad. Marty Haig. I love that man because of what he represents. There was one time when I strongly considered quitting within a year or so after I arrived. We had a staff meeting in Studio B one day, and it was your dad's words that made me stay at Channel 8. He's a rare person in so many ways, and most importantly, one hell of a teacher. On the Saturday a few weeks ago when we had a memorial service, we actually did a spiritual service for my dad, believe it or not, up at the farm. It was very well done. Chuck, thank you so much. You did a beautiful job. And it was very meaningful, and we all spoke, and we all cried, and we all hugged, and there were a lot of tears. And we all talked to God, and we all thanked God for his life and my mom's life, and we buried them together, their ashes side by side in an oak tree. That morning, I hadn't had a chance to get my mail from the previous day, and so I went to the mailbox, and there was a bunch of junk mail, including this envelope, which, you get this all the time, and I just about threw it into the trash because I knew it was probably junk. And I thought, no, I'll open it and see what it is. And so I ripped it open, not knowing what was in there, and it was a piece of cardboard and this letter. And it's embossed up at the top, and I looked at it and I started to read it. And it said, "Dear Brett," addressed to me, Brett Shipp, Dallas, Texas. "Michelle and I were saddened to learn of the loss of your father. We send our heartfelt sympathies as you mourn Bert's passing and reflect upon his life. As the first to show us the world, parents forever leave their mark on who we become. There are no words to ease the pain when we lose ours. I hope cherished stories and lessons from your father help temper the grief you must feel, and I trust the support of loved ones serves as a source of strength at this difficult time. In the days ahead, my thoughts will remain with you. May you find comfort in your father's memory and in the guiding force of his love. Sincerely, Barack Obama." I just want to say that so many of you meant so much to him. He loved you. He loved every one of you. He loved being with you. He learned from you like you learned from him. And he's living in me right now, and he lives in you. And he lives in this room. And this is how I want us all to remember Hoss.
Now, before I continue, I must consult the producer. We are running out of time. Your sister wants to speak. Come on up. And I would imagine Bruce might want to say something and at least thank folks for coming. And I know a lot of you want to share your stories, and we've got Bert's Best Boys ready to play too. So, how much time we got? Please tell me. Okay, well, no, that's not good. So that means nobody else gets to speak. Sorry. But we are having an after party, and you can share your stories at the local Oak at Zang and Davis. Is that correct? So why don't we hear from the family a little bit, and then let the Best Boys take us out, okay? Does that sound good to you? Yes. Brett? Sounds good to the Best Boys. All right, Stephanie?
It's
kind of hard after that. Brett, you did an amazing, amazing job. That was awesome.
All right, let's get it back. Let's go.
Okay, I want to thank Distinctive Life. Y'all did an amazing job with all the memorabilia and stuff. They've just been great to us. Yes, he did have a daughter. My name is Stephanie. I'm also known as Baby for those that have known me. There's just one thing I needed to tell y'all. It was a story about growing up as a daughter of Bert. You can imagine the inappropriateness that there went on. My friends would come over and spend the night just to see if we could go see a dead body or go to a drowning. I mean, I was the most popular girl because of that. But I know all of y'all remember 6th grade, at least at Armstrong Elementary in Highland Park. There was a Disney movie that they divided the boys up into one section and they divided the girls up into another. And it was a sweet little Disney movie about becoming a woman. And I couldn't wait to get home and tell my folks about it. I told my mom, and she's like, "That's nice, baby. We'll talk about it later." My dad comes home. I was like, Daddy, I'm going to become a woman someday. And my dad was like, "Whoa, how did we come to this conclusion?" I said, "Well, we had this movie, and, you know, one of these days, I'm going to become a woman." He said, "You don't have to tell me much more. I think I get the picture." But he said, "Baby, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice, and I hope you remember this. When it happens, when you become a woman, I want you to remember to take lots of showers and lots of baths. Because if you don't, every dog in the neighborhood will be after you." You wouldn't imagine the vision that went through my head when he told me that. But that was my dad, and he made me laugh, and he was awesome. I'm really going to miss him. But I want to thank all of you, especially the ones that came from so far away. David Cassidy, I know he came from Washington, D.C. Gary Reeves came. Vince Van Patten came from Oregon. Is that right?
Vince Patten.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dan Ronan and Rich Crean and oh my God, who knows? Did Jane make it? Jane Horowitz, there you are. Oh, sweetie, God bless you for coming so far. And who else came from where? Oh, Christy, where is she? Christy Montgomery? There you are, sweetie. Oh, thank you for coming in, all you guys. I was just so blessed to hear from y'all the last few weeks. Bruce, do you want to say anything at all?
I just love my dad. He was just so awesome. I think the coolest thing he did for me and Brett, and I think it was fitting that he used the Clint Eastwood music, was that he introduced us to Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Remember the night we went to the drive-in
We watched
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Fistful of Dollars, few dollars more, and Hang 'em High.
And Hang 'em High. And he sat through the whole thing. And remember the Golden Gloves? He would take us to Golden Gloves and watch street kids strap on gloves and beat each other silly till 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, Pop.
Thank y'all so much for coming.
All right, let's bring the band out one more time and we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much.
I've got a lot of people, many people in here got Christmas cards from Bert Shipp over the years, and I got them. And the one that really I remember that sticks out was they wrote a lot of Christmas cards, so it was just a small little writing inside. It said, Pronk, and I knew it was Bert's handwriting. It said, Pronk, Merry Christmas, eat your veggies. And you know, Bert meant it. He did mean it. He's a great man.
Rolling my sweet baby on. Rolling my sweet baby. Gonna lay around the shack till the day. Rolling my sweet baby on. But I ain't gonna work on it. No, ain't gonna work on it. Oh yeah. Gonna lay around the shack till the day. Rolling my sweet baby on. Come on now. Last Friday night, I was lying today, walking the streets with another man. When he come pay my bill, come on, rolling my sweet baby's on, rolling my sweet baby's on. Lay around the shack till the train comes back, and rolling my sweet baby's on.
Thank you, guys. And Tim Hamilton, I'm sorry. You came from Tennessee, my man. Am I not correct? Thank you. God love you. Bronk from Amarillo. Don, thank you, guys. Hoss loves y'all. Okay, everybody, we're taking this party from here. We're taking it from here to the local Oak. Does everybody know where that is? The local Oak at Zang and Davis. Everybody show up who can. We've got to spend $2,500 tonight or I get stuck with the tab. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Hoss loves you. Good night.